Interlude 1. Ovette, Day 1. Ovette tugged against the arm of the prefect, stumbling as he dragged her away from Cal. Her heart sank as she stared at his motionless body on the ground, a pool of blood spreading beneath him. She couldn't see his face, hidden by the angle of his body. She strained to see if he was breathing, to see if she had been able to help him. Or not. Crackling, splintering wood drew her attention back to the orphanage, to the fire that was tearing through her home. Parts of it had already begun to crumble, the roof caving in with a deafening crash. Her chest ached from the sobbing, her anguished cries giving way to dry heaves. The prefect jerked her toward an awaiting airship. Ovette jumped at the hiss of steam from the engine. Fear prickled up her spine as she stared at the warped metal and the scorch marks the engine left on the ground beneath. It was a small craft, but still nothing like she'd seen up close. She and Cal had spent hours staring up at the mining craft that ferried Gift knows what to and from the volcano. She'd giggled when Cal would promise her a life of adventure aboard a craft of their own one day. But this particular craft held no promise of joy. It was military. It didn't have a purpose outside of ferrying prisoners to their fates. "Get in," the prefect said, shoving her forward. She resisted, dug her heels into the dirt. "Move it!" he barked. When she resisted again, the prefect didn't waste his breath on another command. He struck Ovette across the face and shoved her inside. Her eyes watered, her hand cradling the reddened spot on her cheek. Cal would have fought back. Cal would have cursed and swore and swung his fists until he'd been forced to sit down. But she wasn't Cal. She didn't have his bravery. All she had was the sinking realization that the more she resisted, the worse it would get. She picked herself up off the hard metal flooring and sat down in one of the seats, her body shaking from involuntary trembles. The prefect who'd struck her moved forward, but was shoved back by the man in black armor. With a single shove, the armored man sent the prefect sprawling to the ground and stood over him, motionless. "What are you playing at?" the prefect snapped, the veins in his neck bulging. The man with the white hair stepped to the side and leered down at the prefect. "Name," he said, his tone clipped and devoid of emotion. Uh, Watkins. Gale Watkins." "City of origin." "Igny, sir." "District." "It don't got a name. Grew up around the prefect barracks. The Coles, sir." "I see." The white-haired man gestured to the other prefects waiting to board the airship. "See to it that Mr. Watkins is returned to his home and relieved of his prefect status. Let it be known that he is a traitor and have his family blacklisted from service." The other prefects jumped into action, ignoring Watkins' cries and pleas as they dragged him away. The white-haired man's voice carried a different kind of authority than Ovette was used to. She'd grown used to Lady Havisham's yelling or the barking of prefects on patrol. But this man never raised his voice. His tone had remained calm and constant, yet the prefect on the ground had been terrified, wincing at every question, not daring to stand. This was a different kind of obedience, one born of fear. The white-haired man joined Ovette in the airship, seating himself opposite her. The man in black armor followed. Even seated, his presence was looming and silent. "My apologies, my dear," the white-haired man said. "Please accept my assurances that you will not have to endure such treatment again." Ovette scooched over in her seat, leaning as far away as the confined space would allow. "I understand your trepidation," he continued, "and you have every reason to distrust me and those under my command. Just know that as long as you cooperate, No further harm will come to you or your friends. Ovette trembled. The airship began to rise, its large doors sliding into place with a mechanical clasp. The judder of the engine and the lurch of this metal casket sent uncomfortable vibrations through her seat, bordering on nauseating. There's no need to be afraid, Ovette. You know my name? Her voice trembled. I do. I know a great deal about you. Or rather, your ability. Your new gift. Who are you? My title is Lord Inquisitor, but I would prefer we get to know each other on a more personal level. My name is Cesis Gregorin, but you may call me Cesis. Her heart thundered in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears. She flicked her gaze between Ceus and the man in black armor. He will not harm you, Ceus said, nor anyone for that matter. Not unless I command him to do so. Who is he? Ceus turned his gaze to the man in black armor, his expression softening, proud almost. He is my son. Where are you taking me? Are you going to kill me? Ceus turned back to Ovette, his stiff posture doing little to calm her nerves. Why would you think such a thing? You killed them. My family. My. The words tumbled out before she realized she was speaking. Ceus's expression dropped. His lips thinned. His chest rose and fell as he let out a long sigh. The boy who fought my guardian here. What was his name? Ovette didn't reply. He didn't deserve to know Cal's name. Ceus sighed again, his shoulders slumping as he looked to the ground and then back to Ovette. His death, as well as the others, was unfortunate. Deaths I would have preferred to avoid. But you are special, Ovette. I could not risk any harm coming to you. I did what I must do as Lord Inquisitor. What are you going to do with me? What do you want? Ovette, all I want is to help you fulfill your destiny. Week 1. Lava bubbled and roiled outside of the window, a single slit cut into an empty gray space. Ovette stared through the slit, fixed on the pulsing runes of Igni's giant chain, the heat making her eyes water. Her room was sparse, save for a gray slab that jutted out of the wall, topped with white bedding and a small tray of uneaten food. More food on that single tray than she would normally see in a week. Her stomach groaned as she stared at it, but she clenched her fist, her nails digging into her palms as she resolved herself to be defiant somehow, even if it meant wasting food. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she inspected her meager cell, uncertain whether it was because of the room's regulated temperature or because of the lightheadedness that washed over her every time she thought of the chain and its pulsing runes. Not thinking about the chain was easier said than done. The air vibrated with gift, a constant, low hum that resonated in the base of her skull. There was a polite knock at the door. Ovette, may I come in? She didn't respond, didn't know what to say. She had no idea how long she'd been held in this place. No idea how long it had been since her world had burned down around her. Ceus had been true to his word. She hadn't come to harm since her arrival. In fact, she'd been treated well, albeit isolated in this room. The knock came again. Ovette. Come in, she said, her voice trembling as she sat down on the bed. Cius entered, carrying a fresh tray of food. He set the tray next to the other, not noticing, or deciding not to comment on, the uneaten contents of the previous tray. His stride echoed in the space as he moved, making the room feel smaller, with fewer places to hide. Ovette backed away from his outstretched hand. "There's really no reason to fear me, my dear," he said, his voice calm. "When are you going to let me go?" "That won't be happening," he replied, unblinking. His voice, still carrying authority, was layered with subtle sincerity. Ovette was determined to hate this man, determined not to be fooled by kind words. He was her enemy, and no amount of fresh food or promises of safety would ever change that. Ever. "Then I have nothing to say to you," Ovette said, turning her back to him. It might have been all the defiance she could offer, but a little pride still filtered through her fear. "Why do you hate us Davins so much?" he asked. The question took her by surprise. Why would someone like him care about what she thought? It's obvious," she replied, wary of revealing a hidden secret of some sort. "Not to me," he said, cold and focused. "You're always taking whatever you want, and—" She tried her best to channel Cal. What would he say if he were here? "You disappear anyone who steps out of line, anyone who doesn't conform to your idea of a perfect citizen." She added as much venom to her voice as she could. She liked the feeling of being defiant. It staved off the helplessness. "Is that what Leifestus taught you? That we're all terrible people? Boogeymen who view Udens as bugs to be stepped on?" How, how do you know Leif?" Ovette asked, nervous about the answer. So much of her world had been shattered. She wasn't sure how much more she could take. "Leif and I are very old friends, although I am not so sure he would call us that any longer. Suffice to say, there is a great deal about that man you do not know, and judging by your obvious affection for him, it may be better if you were to never find out." He had to be lying. There was no way Leif would ever call him a friend. He was a Daven. Leif hated the Davens as much as anyone. Didn't he? The Lord Inquisitor stood, handing the old tray of food to the black-armored man waiting behind him. Ovette hadn't noticed him until now. He stood motionless, not responding to being handed something as a normal man would. A sense of dread flowed from him. It made him difficult to look at and made Ovette's skin prickle as if touched by frost. And yet, underneath it all, there was something familiar. "He scares me," Ovette said, unable to keep the words to herself as she looked at the Cius's son. "Understandable," Cius replied. "He has lost much of what once made him who he was, but my love for him has never waned." He gripped his son's pauldron tight, looking every bit the proud father. "What happened to him?" It took Cius a few seconds to answer, the memory painful to relive. "There was an incident involving the previous Gyfted. Suffice to say, his sacrifice saved the lives of countless innocents. Yet the ordeal changed him, made him who he is now." "Is he dead?" she asked, not sure how else to put her feeling into words. It took several seconds for Cius to answer again, his response carefully chosen. "He is not alive." It was difficult to pin down the sensation the son gave off. Ovette's gift allowed her to feel people out. She didn't fully understand how it worked, but she could feel the presence of others, could tune into their emotions. Even Cius, as guarded as he thought he was, resonated with her. But not his son. He was nothing, like a wound in the gift. Cius gestured for his son to leave the room, holding the door open for him as he passed through. I'm afraid I shall have to end our discussion here, he said, snapping Ovette's attention back into the room. There is much to prepare for the linking ceremony. The ceremony? Is it going to hurt? Ovette asked, helplessness winning out over defiance. It will, very much. And for that, I am truly sorry. Cius replied, bowing low as he spoke. Ovette swallowed hard, her focus wandering again. The pulse and thrum of the gift around her made her head spin. I understand your fear, but consider this. If we Davins are as evil as you say, then you have been given a unique opportunity to show us a better way. I did not lie when I said you were very special, Ovette. Your power could help better the lives of those you love, of all Udens. Is that not worth the pain? Week 2. Cal! Ovette startled awake, the hazy image of Cal lying next to her clinging to her mind. He looked hurt, a broken blade at his side. She coughed against the dryness in her throat, swallowed despite the burning ache in her lungs. Groaning, she sat up, her body protesting every movement. A gentle breeze and the caw of birds snapped her attention to the window. Beyond it, mountains topped with ice jagged the distant skyline. Unfamiliar lakes and rivers, their names unknown, snaked their way between dense forests, the land awash with vibrant blues and greens. He's not here. Cius's voice drew her back into the room, his stone-like expression cracked with concern. The memory of Cal faded, replaced by a gnawing in her stomach. Other memories surfaced. A room crumbling around her, the man in black armor carrying her through din and destruction. Is he? She couldn't finish. Saying it aloud might make it true, and Ovette wasn't ready for it to be true. How could she ever be? I believe so. Yes. The Lord Inquisitor bowed his head, and Ovette struggled to breathe. Her tongue felt too big for her mouth, threatened to choke her. No, 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 no. The gnawing spread from her stomach to her chest, hollowing her. We're not sure, but we believe the rebels planned to take your life. It's assumed they believed you to be too dangerous to be kept alive. They were. The words caught in her throat. It all felt pointless. These rebels are dangerous. To think they were able to get so close to you that they nearly succeeded. He paused, taking in a deep breath. I'm afraid that's not all. The volcano erupted. Igni is gone. If not for my son. He gestured to the man in black, who responded with stillness. We might both have perished. Cal, Leif, everyone. Nausea swept over Ovette, her skin flushed with heat. Her body trembled. She wanted to cry, to release the pressure building behind her eyes, but the tears felt trapped. It would appear your friend fell in with the wrong people. Whether or not he was aware, he aided in the destruction of half the city, doomed countless citizens to a horrifying fate. Caesar's tone shifted. He kept his composure, but there was no mistaking the disgust in his voice. Dropping to one knee, he clasped Ovette's hands together, holding them tight. I promise you, I will find those responsible, those who organized this travesty. They shall face justice. Her gaze wandered over his features. It was difficult to decide where she should look. The thump of blood in her ears drowned out his words. He stood, gesturing to the man in black armor. I shall give you some space. Ovette's arms shot out before she realized it. Her fingers clamped hard around the Colt gauntlet of his armor, her eyes wide and stinging. Please, don't leave. He nodded, then gestured for the man in black to leave once again. As the Lord Inquisitor sat down next to her, Ovette gave in to the weight in her stomach, to the crash of tears that heaved her chest. Month 3. Ovette winced as Clara, a young woman in the service of the Lord Inquisitor, tended to what remained of her wounds. It had been almost a month since the destruction of Igni, almost a month since her world had fallen apart. Her body was healing well, according to Cius and Clara. Little to no scarring, they'd assured her, but some scars ran deeper. Ovette knew that all too well. The door opened and Cius entered, his expression soft, his son trailing behind him. How is she, Clara? Recovering well, I hope. Yes, Lord Inquisitor, Clara replied. She had rosy cheeks, mousy brown hair that curled at the tips, and a softness to her voice that conveyed obedience. That is good news. Now, there's something I must discuss with Ovette. Cius gestured for Clara to leave the room, watching and waiting for the door to click shut. He turned back to Ovette, hands clasped behind his back, his posture ramrod straight. As soon as you're sufficiently healed, I'd like for you to begin your training. My training? Ovette asked, her brow furrowing. More tutelage than training, at least for now. You have much to learn about your powers, where they come from, how best to use them, how to help your people. His excitement betrayed his calm demeanor, enthusiasm quickening his words. I don't want to train. I want to return to Igni. I want to help the people there and look for. Her words trailed off, this thought spiking pain in her chest. The idea still too raw, too painful to voice. The area surrounding Igni is unstable. I understand your desire to help your people, but being there would put you in great danger. You are too valuable to us to lose, Ovette. Ovette had heard this line time and time again over the past few weeks about how precious she was, how important to the future she was. But she didn't feel special or important. She felt weak, helpless, at the mercy of a stranger pretending to be a friend. As if sensing her thoughts, Sia sighed. Look, I know you're tired of hearing me talk about how important you are. You miss your old life, your old family. I understand, more than you realize. But I implore you to think of all the families that need our help, the displaced, the lost, those who need someone to guide them, to show them a better, brighter future. He knelt, coming eye level with her. Let me help you realize your potential. Let us work together to ensure nothing like Igni ever happens to the Uden people again. Ovette didn't know what to say. She wanted to hate this man, wanted to blame him for everything that had happened. But what if he was right? What if the rebels were to blame for the volcano erupting? What if Cal was to blame? You could have a life here, Ovette. One of purpose, one of service to your people. Isn't that what you want? Sia stood, closing the door gently as he did. Ovette sat in the quiet room for a while, Sia's words echoing in her mind. Cal wouldn't have destroyed the city on purpose. Even if he was to blame, it had to have been an accident. He'd always been there for her, always defended her and the littles whenever they were bullied. But was that enough of an excuse? She reached out with her gift, trying to touch his essence, to feel it somewhere, anywhere. Her senses stretched out throughout the spire. Echoes of the gift being channeled rang like a bell in her mind. A cook lighting a fire, a maid utilizing multiple brooms at once. She was connected to all of it, to the ebb and flow of its energy. And something else, too, a presence, older, quieter, but no less potent. Intrigued, she reached a little further and prodded it gently. The presence stirred, and the spire stirred with it. Year 2. Fierce winds buffeted the airship, rattling its frame. Ovette grabbed hold of the handrail of her seat, trying to steady herself and her frayed nerves. Across from her, Sias and his son sat unfazed by the jittering of their craft. This valley is surrounded by fierce winds, Sias called over the howling gusts. We'll soon pass near the chain. The winds will be quieter there. Ovette nodded, though his words were nearly drowned out by the storm. His expression held a mix of amusement and concern, a look she'd grown familiar with over the past 2 years. Sias had been true to his word. Ovette's time at the Spire had been full of study and self-discovery. It had been, and still was, a grueling process, but Ovette loved it. She was thankful for the opportunity to learn more about herself and the origin of her powers. And if the reports coming from the labor camp in Valewind were true, her abilities would be put to the test today. The winds outside began to die down as the airship rose. Valewind's chain loomed into view, its runes glowing a softer green than Igni's tempered orange. Ovette had grown accustomed to sensing the gift within Sanctum Spire, but it still amazed her how different it always felt elsewhere. Her studies had taught her that each chain harnessed a different aspect of the gift: destruction, perception, manipulation. Valewind's chain harnessed manipulation, more commonly known as the gift of the wind. Ovette clutched her chest as she studied the chain, her breath catching. The hum of the gift resonated deep within her, a reminder of the power she was still learning to wield. It had been a long time since Igni's fall, and Ovette would never forget those she had lost. But as Sias often said, we honor those we have lost by doing what we can for those who remain. It was a simple saying, but one that resonated with her. Doing what she could for those who remained felt right, like it was her calling. The airship landed with a soft thud, and the doors hissed open to a field of maimed workers, sprawled across anything big enough to hold them. Ovette took a fortifying breath and set to her task, determined to do what she could to help her people.